can all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. How's everyone today? So it's I want us all to just kind of stop for a minute and just take about 30 seconds and just kind of ask yourself, and this question's a little bit different. You know, maybe some of you here for the first time, or you're brand new to Buddhist practice. Maybe some of you have been stuck coming here for years and everywhere in between. And just kind of take a moment quietly within yourself and just ask yourself and remind yourself, what was the original intention you had for showing up or starting this practice? So if it was 10 years ago, try to reflect on what drew you to seek something. It's not necessarily about Buddhism or meditation. It's much deeper than that, because Buddhist practice and meditation is just that thing that we were craving and desiring. But what I'm asking you to sit with for a moment is, what is it inside you at that moment? Or again, if today is your first time ever showing up to meditation or Buddhist practice, what is it that was stirring inside you that said, I'm seeking something? And just kind of sit with that for about 30 seconds. All right, so is there anyone who'd like to share? Again, if it's your first time, great. Or if you've been at this for a long time, anyone want to share in brief? We don't need your whole life story. We're only here for an hour. But in brief, what was it for you?
I think I was looking for some kind of tranquility in my life.
Some kind of tranquility? Thank you. And I'll repeat for the most part, just so our millions of YouTube followers can hear as well. Yeah, Martina and then Tom.
The world out there was scaring me. I was looking for a community of like-minded people.
The world out there was scaring you, and you were looking for a group of like-minded people. And this group hasn't scared you off yet, huh?
I was going through a lot of suffering at the time, and I came for the 12-step on Saturday morning, and just looking for support, and found a place that is full of love.
Yeah, a lot of suffering at the time, came for the 12-step initially in the morning, and looking for a place that was filled with lots of love. Thank you.
My mom was dying of terminal cancer when I was about 27, I was having heart palpitations and I was stressed, and discovered someone that really helped me through that from this type of philosophy. So
Yeah. So again, just to share for those who maybe didn't hear it, your mom was dying when you were 27, and you were suffering from heart palpitations and other stresses or anxieties, and so you found someone at the time that really helped you settle into this path and this practice, this philosophy. Thank you.
It was recommended to me to come here because I was struggling with overactive thinking, I guess is the way I would put it. That was causing a lot of suffering.
Is this your first time here?
No, I've been here. This is my first time back in years.
Okay. Oh, that was you who just said I haven't been back in
Yeah.
years. Yeah. What's your name again?
Beth.
Beth. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How's that overactive thinking going?
It's a work in progress always.
Anyone else in here have overactive thinking? Yeah. You are not alone. You know. Anyone else? We'll do maybe two more. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just trying to be a kinder person overall.
Kinder person overall.
Yeah.
Yes, I can relate. Still a work in progress.
Yes.
Travis, was there?
Oh,
Yeah.
I needed a healthy way to work through rage and anger.
Needed a healthy way to work through rage and anger. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
I have been searching ever since I was a little kid. I still don't know exactly why. Maybe it's curiosity, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Feeling something. I'm not sure.
So curious since you were a little kid, not sure why, and still kind of searching, but trying to feel something. Yeah. Anyone else want to share? Yeah, Jeff.
Actually, I was reading a book and I discovered there's another way to think about spirituality because I was pretty dissatisfied with my own life association with American spirituality. And so I found this.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. There's a great book for those who aren't, and was it Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by any chance?
No,
Okay.
Madison book.
What's that?
Snow Leopard.
Oh, yeah. There's a great book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by Chogyam Trungpa, which is really phenomenal if anyone's not familiar with that. Thanks for sharing. I think it's, the reason I asked that is just always as a reminder, very often I'll start this morning and say, why are you here? You get a lot of the kind of standard answers. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it's really important, especially for those who are new or haven't checked in a while, to just kind of be reminded, like, hey, what was it about me in my life at that time or currently? Because for many of us, whatever it was at that time, some of those things are still very present. Maybe they've just shifted or changed. But to really deeply explore what it is in you, and especially for those who are newer to the practice, it's all of this isn't so much about Buddhism or meditation. It's about you. And it's about recognizing and waking up to, why are you struggling? Why are you suffering? Where is your pain? Right? And I don't point this out to make it sound so miserable and depressing, but that's the first thing the Buddha wanted us to explore, which is, what is our suffering? And we have to kind of really take some time and look at that. And for me, the importance of Sangha, which a few of you mentioned, the importance of community, is to be able to do that with other people, to where we're not just hating ourselves for having misery or depression or anger or rage. We can surround ourselves with a bunch of other wonderful people who have misery and anger and depression and rage, right? Isn't that great? Right? And I say that jokingly, but also seriously, right? As I often say, nobody is here because everything in their life is perfect and peaceful for the most part. So I think it's just good, and just here, but it's a good practice in your own life outside of here. Each morning, each day, each week, whatever it is, just kind of stop and check in to remind yourself of what I'm really talking about here is your original intention. Because we can lose sight of that as we get wrapped up in all of the craziness of life, all of the, the drama and the chaos and the just mass destruction of the world around us, and the constant flooding of social media and the news outlets and everything. We can just get bombarded and just lost. And it's important to remind ourselves to set everything down for a few moments each day and just check in with, What was the intention of why I started this? And when you find yourself kind of losing that way or losing that path, check in again and remind yourself. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start a meditation practice. To all of you YouTube followers, thanks for joining us. Sorry, I should have been more diligent and checked in with you, but feel free to share as well. So Bill did share desiring a greater peace of mind. So yeah, feel free for all of you to share anything you'd like as well. So meditation practice, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Please don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion or the chairs or the benches, often it helps sliding a little bit forward. The stomach is pressed out, allows the back to straighten slightly. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Doesn't make you a bad meditator. Just means your leg hurts. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention and focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. he began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get every single day. Our entire life, things happen, and we react. More stuff happens, more reactions. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It is not the escape that often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix it. It makes you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. So you can slowly begin to make changes within your day-to-day life. It doesn't mean you have to do less. It doesn't mean you have to accomplish less. It doesn't mean you have to be less. It just means you become aware of why your mind is not settled, why your mind is not at peace, why your mind is incredibly challenged, and your heart as well. So this practice creates an opportunity for you to bear witness and be with your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And then when you become aware of what your thoughts and your words and your actions are, and you recognize how they may potentially be helpful or how they may be harmful to self and others, this is where the cultivation of compassion comes in, the cultivation of wisdom comes in, and we begin to shift what we think and what we say and what we do. Because I believe from the Buddhist teachings, which this teaching of bodhicitta, Buddha nature, the Buddha says that we all are already awakened. We are all no different than the Buddha. The Buddha was a human. Woke up, ate, went to the bathroom, slept. Same things we do. But he realized the cause of his suffering. He made changes, and that had a tremendous impact. I mean, here we are 2,500 years later, sitting around talking about this stuff that some prince did. That's all he was. He was a prince. And he left that life to live a simple life. Now, we don't have to leave the lives that you're in. But how can you create a simple life in your mind and in your heart? And this teaching of bodhicitta, Buddha nature, that we're all already awakened, to me, regardless of the things we've done in our past, maybe the harm we've caused self or others, the pain we've caused self or others, no matter how positively or negatively you may view your sense of self, we all have the opportunity from this moment on, going forward, to make changes. And I think that's great. But too often we may find ourselves thinking way too much about stuff we've done in the past. And so we get stuck in this story This is my past. This is what I've done. This is the harm I've caused. And so many people have spent way too many years with this kind of negative view of themselves. And that story just doesn't go away. I mean, the simple answer to that is the Buddha said there is no self, but whatever story you're telling yourself isn't correct. It's just a story. And once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our minds and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. And in reality, not much changed, but us and our reaction to the world. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really prefer just to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning to open up to questions. And same to everybody who's joining us virtually. If you have questions somewhere on the screen there, you have a chat box, feel free to type them in, and I'll do my best to respond there as well.
Last week, you were ending, you said that the Buddha had eaten bad food, knowing that it was bad food, and he passed away. What's up with that?
What's up with that? What's up with all those Buddhist stories, man? Yeah, so the Buddha was 80 when he died. And there was a question last week about what the Buddha ate. And so I'm not going to retell that whole piece right now. But the end of his life was food that had been prepared that was just bad, poisonous. And he knew that it was that. And so his health was deteriorating and he was near death. His time had come. And so he decided to take that food and eat it. And then got sick from it. And then passed. Yeah. That's what's up with that. Yeah. Yeah.
I was curious. I mean, I know that he starved himself for a long time and spent a lot of time sitting there doing a whole bunch of nothing. But did you have any philosophy on exercise?
Yeah. Good question. So the question was, he starved himself, as you say. He sat for a long time, meditation. What was his philosophy on exercise, right? That's your question. Yeah. So I think there's a couple ways to look at this, like all questions. And instead of looking for kind of like, where was the sutra on, the morning exercises? Look at it as what he learned where he starved himself was that physical health was important. That to me is the lesson right there, that they thought at that time, again, for those who don't know, in India, 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ, as Hindus, as yogis, that was they were yogis. They were yoga practitioners, day in and day out. I don't know how many wind sprints Siddhartha did. I don't know that he trained Walter Payton style and ran up hills. I don't know that he, had some sit-up, push-up regimen he was doing every day. But they were yogis. And the practice of the yogis then was actually that, and I'm not a yogi, so I usually end up offending yogis because I don't mean it in this way. But the practice was that yoga was done as a preparation for then seated meditation. So taking care of the physical body was incredibly important. What they thought, again, just to clarify for anybody else as well, was that the way to overcome the attachment to the self, which is what they were trying to do, was to not attach to physical form, to the physical body. And what he realized was that was not the way. So he brought in the teaching of the middle path, not living in excess, not living in starvation. And then the other way to think about it is everything in his teachings, right? Even if you look at just the cause of our suffering, greed, anger, and ignorance. If we are greedy with intake of food, right? If we are angry through consumption, if we are ignorant, meaning if we're ignoring what this is actually doing to our body, we're just causing harm, right? And I know this as well as anybody. I love to sit down and eat pizza. And I also know 100% exactly what that is doing to myself. Nothing good. But it sure does taste good. Right? And so there's that instant, immediate gratification. We can apply all these teachings. The thing that I love about the Dharma, what the Buddha taught, is that they apply to everything. They apply to the clothes we buy, to the food we eat, to the cars or transportation we use, to everything. But look at how we consume and understand that if we lose this physical body, right, to be reborn, as the Buddha taught, as a human is incredibly rare. How many of you in here think you have good karma? See, the sad part is most people don't. Like, you're all looking at me, but I can promise you there were 0 hands and there was one like maybe. Right? Really? None of you think you have good karma? Like, look at that. I'm going to say this a third time. Everybody look around the room. Raise your hand if you think you have good karma. We got 1.
I think it's part of.
We got 3 and
spectrum of
sorry.
karma.
So go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like it's a part of a spectrum of karma. There are things that I might perceive as bad, things I might perceive as it just is karma, or, to the other end. And I think it's all about what we perceive as what's good and bad.
Yes, and I hate to say no, but yes and no. Let me touch on that first, and then I'll come back to the sadness that everybody in this room, except for 3.5 people, don't think they have good karma. I'm still stuck on that for a minute, but I want to address that. Yes, it is perception. But our perception of a situation, as you're stating, I think, well, you didn't state this, but I'm making an assumption based on the way you said it, that you recognize that things happen, right? And you have a perception of it. And your perception of it doesn't change what's happening, right? And so, but that perception of it is where you're saying, I perceive this as good, so I'm calling this good karma. I perceive this as bad, so I'm calling this as bad karma. Is that kind of fair, what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, abandon that. Right?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that because I think it's good, it is good, or is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
And this is for everybody. I mean, I appreciate you playing along. Let me clarify a few things about karma. Back up, because this is so important to understand, right? Is that karma means action. Karma is simply what we think, what we say, and what we do. Karma, most people think, especially if you're newer to this practice, that karma is about what we get, or about what happens to us, or that expression of what goes around comes around. That's not karma. Karma has nothing to do with what's happening to us. Karma is what we give. Karma means action. And the Buddha taught we generate action 3 ways: body, speech, mind. So what we think, what we say, and what we do. So karma is what we bring into the world. Think of when you're playing pool and you have a cue ball hits the rack. Every time that cue ball hits the rack, every ball goes into a different direction. Our entire lives, we are that cue ball. And every person, place, and thing that we interact with, we leave an imprint on. Whether it's from our thoughts, whether it's from our words, or whether it's from our actions. Now, when we bring our thoughts and our words and our actions into our daily lives, there is the law. Very often karma is described as the law of cause and effect. And this is very specifically to me what I hear. And what you're saying is that the cause and effect, and the effects we look at and say this is a bad effect or this is a good effect. But our perception of that situation is completely irrelevant. Now, does that make sense so far? On a larger scale, kind of coming, does that make sense? Again, I'm not even really addressing specifically what you said. I'm just more big picture. Going back to the sadness that like 3 and a couple halves of you think you have good karma, recognize how many of you had the ability to eat this morning? How many of you had the ability to have shelter this morning? How many of you had the ability to have clothes to wear? And even choices of clothes to wear. Your karma is phenomenal. If we're going to look at karma in the traditional way of like, what is my life like? Right? Because even for me, when I say the Buddha taught that we all have phenomenal karma, what that's really looking at is kind of the conditions, the law of cause and effect, and what is the condition of our lives. Now, the challenge is when things happen that we label as kind of bad and painful, we then say, well, my karma's bad. Karma ultimately is not good or bad. Karma is what we give, and the law of cause and effect creates an experience. And even in those moments where we think like something bad is happening to me, you still got food, you still got shelter, you still got clothes, you still have your life, you're still human with an incredible opportunity to figure out how to end your suffering. So we're pretty darn fortunate, right? But that's really hard for us to, if you put it into just kind of simple terms, how many of you are just grateful for what you have? All right, there we go. We get a few more hands and some halves, right? And that's honest too. Very often we aren't grateful for what we have, or sometimes with gratitude, there's moments where we're more grateful than others, or we take for granted, or we don't appreciate what we have. And this practice for me has just been a constant daily reminder to ground ourselves in a deep place of gratitude and appreciation for all that we do have. You know? So, yes.
So in thinking of it that way, Putin has good karma. I mean, I think I just don't really understand it.
I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah.
correct, right?
Well, it's not about, well, to answer your question, yes. It doesn't mean he's doing what you consider as good. It doesn't mean he's doing what I consider as good. But as a human, to be reborn as a human, let me back up for a minute before I get to, the question was, for those who didn't hear, so if you're hearing me correctly, that means Putin has good karma. That's the question, right? Okay. I don't do religion and I don't do politics, so let me try to address this. All right. I want to share something that I'm going to try to paraphrase it because I just heard it. I'm joining right now. Don't tell anyone I'm not there, but there's a conference going on in New York right now, and so I'm also there. Just don't tell them I'm not there. And so I've been virtually joining that since yesterday. It's a 4-day beautiful conference. But there was a question asked to Dr. Larry Ward, who's an incredible teacher, and someone asked him the topic for this section of the panel was Buddhism's response and how they address the environmental crisis. And he started, his teacher was Thich Nhat Hanh, and he started, one of the things he said was that his response to that question, he quoted Thich Nhat Hanh, and the way he answered it was by saying something to the effect of, and again, forgive me for not saying this exactly, but something to the effect of, I'm going to answer this in the way that most people with Buddhism in America don't want to talk about it. And he said, Thich Nhat Hanh says the answer to take care of the environment is to understand rebirth. Because if we all actually believed, this is Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, that we were going to be reborn, we would take care of this place better. Because we're all coming back, folks. At least according to the Buddhist teachings, the Hindu teachings. Now, again, for those who are maybe brand new or don't know me, again, a show of hands. How many of you here came this morning because you want to have a good rebirth? A couple of you. And that's only because I got 3 hands. That's only because you've heard me throw this out there for years. And finally, you're like, fine, I'm just going to buy in, right? The Buddha was teaching at a time where rebirth was just what everybody believed. Now, we don't have enough time to get into this, but for the most part, people in this culture that grew up with Western religious views, this idea of rebirth is like foreign. It's this thing that doesn't make any sense. To them, at that time, 2,500 years ago, one life and going to heaven and hell, that would have been insane. You would have been viewed as the crazy ones. Now, if you have a view of rebirth, you're like, well, you're nuts. What are you on? When the Buddha taught all of these teachings, coming back to your question about rebirth, that's what everybody believed. And the teaching is that if you are reborn as a human, what that means is your past karma, your past cultivation, your past, what's called alaya vijnana, your storehouse consciousness, everything that you have cultivated and created in the past allowed you to be reborn as a human. And that's very rare. Having good or bad karma is not about saying a person is good or bad. It's not about saying that what they're doing is right or wrong. Very often we want to justify good people and bad people. You're good, you're bad. Right? You know how much destruction I have caused in my life? And this isn't just like, no, I'm very serious. How much pain and destruction I have caused in my life? A ton. And then one could say, well, you didn't, do that, or you didn't. Well, first of all, you don't know. But we want to be very careful at saying, we want Putin to have nothing but wisdom and compassion in his heart. I hope his karma is incredible if we're going to use it in that sense. Because if he has nothing but kindness and love and compassion in his heart, then things change. There's a great story. King Ashoka. I always forget what century. I want to say 8th century, 12th century. I could be off by multiple centuries. But he was a king and slaughtered so many people in battle. And then found Buddhist teachings. Buddhism would have died without King Ashoka. In India, Buddhism was dying. And he came across the Buddhist teachings. And he went out onto the battlefield and just saw bloody bodies everywhere. And said, I can't do this anymore. I hope Putin can recognize his Buddha nature and awaken. I hope all of us can recognize our Buddha nature and awaken. Because all of us, probably, again, I don't like to assume too much or put thoughts or words into your mouth, but is there anyone in this room that hasn't caused harm or pain or suffering to others. So let's start there. Always come back to that practice and hope that we can figure out how to end our suffering. We're all on a journey. And some people's journeys cause a tremendous amount of disgusting horror, more so than others. And again, for those who don't know me, I'm not trying to compare things you've done to what Putin is doing. I just want to put a little asterisk there. So you don't walk out of here, if you're here for the first time, and think like, I went to something and the guy was trying to compare us to Putin. Not my point. But I want us to honestly explore, we have caused pain. So, any final thoughts or questions on that light note before we wrap up? Yeah, Martina, please.
Yeah, raising back to your original question about, how many of us think we have good karma. The reason I didn't raise my hand is around, karma is action. It's my action in this world. And in the spectrum of my lifetime, I would be hard pressed to say it's been good. That's why I didn't raise my hand, because it's all about growth and perspective over time.
Understood. But so then just to clarify, so are you, just a genuine question, not just for me, but for everybody to add a little thought to that, then are you saying that you're looking at the course of your lifetime and you're viewing it and saying, again, to use the words, that you've done more bad than good?
I didn't evaluate it as more or less. More of the awareness that when I was younger, I was really quite oblivious and unconscious, really.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of try to work out my own balance in the people around me, and because there's been good or bad or whatever you want to think, but trying to understand more that using compassion, that I really try to continue to love, but I don't like people's actions. So before I'm able to kind of, differentiate a little bit, that I continue to love them, I just don't like them.
I'm not really sure what to say to that, but
it's just compassion.
Yes, and I would tend to think that if you can have love and compassion for someone while you don't like them, it also keeps you from potentially causing more harm to them, and also potentially keeps you from carrying the anger or disgust around in you.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
Exactly.
Right? So you can see someone, you love them, you have compassion for them, you just don't like them. But if you settle in, I hate this person, then who carries that hate? Not them. You. Right? Yeah. Yeah, it's a good practice. Anything else you're going to say?
Yeah, I'm confused. And I think maybe a lot of people are too, for the same reason. People often say, I have good karma, or you have good karma or bad karma. When they say you have, but when you say it's an action, that doesn't work in English.
Correct.
So that's why I get confused when you say, when you ask, do you have good karma? That doesn't sound like an action.
Right. The action, yes, understood. Fair enough. And the action, when, and I'll close with this thought as we wrap up here. When I introduce the idea or the teaching that the Buddha said to be reborn as a human is very rare. And that action to be reborn as a human came from our collection of karma. all of our, it's called Alaya Vijnana, Staros consciousness, but all our entire lives, say last lives, thoughts, words, and actions, that all becomes what continues. And if that is all, it's super hard with semantics because we're using words that don't apply. I have to say the word good in a way to make it make sense. But if all of those thoughts, words, and actions are more good than bad, or let's forget good and bad, pleasant, more pleasant than unpleasant, more beneficial than harmful, more giving than taking, more helpful than destructive, then that creates the continuous condition, the law of cause and effect, also karma, the action of being reborn.
So is karma something that you do and something that you have?
You don't have it, you create it.
But do you possess it?
There's nothing to possess. You don't possess it. No. Oh, man, great questions. You don't possess karma.
Does it?
Yeah, good.
What are you saying? You carry it with you.
It carries
Your
you.
life.
But again, then we're getting into there is no you, there's no self. So here's, I'll close with this. Were you going to add something? Then I'll close.
I was just gonna say, so when you're asking, do you have good karma, do you create good karma? Is that the question?
No, what I'm saying is that as you're breaking down what I asked, what I'm learning is I need to rephrase the way I asked that question. And I haven't figured out the best way to do that yet, so give me a week. But the general idea is that are we viewing ourselves as being fortunate or not? See, that we can all relate to. The word karma then throws us off. But let me come back to that with this final thought. My first master, Venerable Yuzhur, always said to me, instead of trying to answer questions, or get instead of trying to get the answer to a question, change the way you ask the question. And what I eventually realized from that is, as I continued to read and look, what did the Buddha teach on this? I then began to clarify in my own mind what he was teaching. So continue to read as much as you can about karma, rebirth, and then you'll begin to have a deeper understanding of that. Yeah. Yeah.
I just had an analogy that came to my mind where, so if you have a match and you have a candle in front of you or something that could be explosive, so your karma is like you light the match and you either light the candle, which creates light, or you light the thing that explodes. The result that happens, you don't own it. It just is the consequence of the action that you no longer own.
Which is the law of cause and effect.
Right.
Yes. And ironically enough, great metaphor, because you know what nirvana is? Liberation from suffering. The Buddha taught that to awaken, to enter into nirvana, is to extinguish. And the metaphor always is you have a flame and you blow it out. Where does the flame go? That's nirvana. Yes. I am trying to end. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Another analogy would be like a hug. It's something that you give, and we use the language of giving and receiving a hug, but it doesn't have any physical properties, but it still has a very, observable effect on people's mood.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So you can give
Thank you.
somebody a hug, but they still don't have one.
So you get to read karma, rebirth, and no self. Those are the teachings for you. Seriously. That's it right there. Karma, rebirth, and non-self. And to try to intellectually understand these things with the Western mind that we have been raised with, you're going to struggle. I'm just warning you right now. So good luck. All right, we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all merit be transferred to more than 6 million people who have lost lives during this pandemic, their family and friends who continue to suffer, to all of those in Ukraine and surrounding areas who suffered this time, and those who lost lives from the shooting in Texas, and their family and friends who suffered this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this little temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we are not monks, we are not nuns, we are not gurus, we are not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our unenlightened view of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. We closed for 18 months out of 24. We appreciate you all who've kept us here. We're grateful to be open 3-4 months straight now, which seems like a miracle in its own right. We also appreciate you continuing to, socially distance with the seating and wearing the masks and having Travis, microchip you as you come into the door. So we appreciate you all playing along as we do our best to keep a safe environment. As COVID continues to rise in San Diego and get crazier, we'll continue to do our best to stay safe and hopefully stay open. So Buddha for You also shut down 18 months. It's open downstairs if you need anything. A couple things that are back. We finally started our Day of Silence retreat this morning. That's the first Saturday of the month, so it's beautiful to see a bunch of people in here just getting silent for 4 hours. That does require an RSVP as well because we limit it to 15 people. The family sangha is back. It's beautiful to have that going again. That's once a month on the summer, during the summer as well. So for the most part, everything except our food distribution is up and running again, and we're discussing and pondering when and will that will start again. So I appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for, it's no fun when I don't get challenged. So I really appreciate you, you're making me think today. It's a lot easier. So thank you all for being here. Please be safe, be well, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, so